Media always cautions people about the dangers of gaming, from increased aggression to addiction to depression, and it can be worrisome. Chances are that you know someone who games a lot, and perhaps you're concerned about them. Perhaps you have a kid who is always on their computer, and all you want is to make sure that they come out as a well-adjusted human being. I'm here to tell you that gaming is not all as bad as people make it seem, and that, in fact, there are a lot of positive benefits to gaming that people don't talk about. For this video, the sources I am currently talking about will be displayed in this corner of the screen. The full citations will be found in the description. Now let's get into it. First, let's talk about why there's so much coverage about only the negative effects of playing video games. When mass shootings were first becoming a very obvious issue, the news would go into the background of the culprit, and a lot of these culprits were found to play violent video games. Because of this, the president at the time, Obama, decided to call for more research on the negative effects of gaming. While the research was very much needed, it caused the findings of the effects of gaming to become very skewed. Only recently have people started to research any positive effects of playing games, providing a much more complete picture of the issue. Before I go into these positive effects, I want to address some of the concerns a lot of people may have about video gaming in the first place. The biggest one, of course, being the idea that playing violent video games causes aggression. There is significant discourse within the scientific community about this. It seems as if most of the experiments have extreme bias in them, and people who do the same experiment can get completely different results. Therefore, we cannot come to a conclusion about this topic, but I will show some of the more optimistic findings. Some researchers have found no correlation at all between playing violent video games and aggression levels. Others find some correlation, but any increase in aggression levels seem to be very minor. And if it does increase aggression, it does not increase violence. In fact, one study suggests that playing violent video games has completely insignificant effects on aggression levels compared to, quote, other factors including depression, exposure to family violence, and antisocial personality traits and peer influences, end quote. Halbrook et al. These were the main impactors on aggression levels. Consuming media with gratuitous violence may cause a sensitization to violence, but as long as the player understands the difference between fiction and reality, it is fine. For example, my mother would let my brother play adult video games when we were kids, but she would always say this: "You may play these games as long as you are nice to your sisters." Eventually, my brother did start becoming mean to us, so the games got taken away. After some time, my brother learned his lesson and was being nice, so my mother cautiously gave the games back. My mom didn't have to take the games away again after that, and my brother remains one of the most caring people I know. Addiction is another aspect of gaming that people fear. However, according to Joanne Hari, it is not the object itself that causes addiction, but the person's lack of external support from friends and family. Studies have found that should a person have good relationships, support, and enrichment, they won't become addicted to drugs like meth or heroin. People naturally seek bonds, and when they don't have them, they bond with substances or activities. In this way, gaming addiction is likely only on the same level as shopping or food addictions. In fact, 92% of middle school boys and 97% of middle school girls have reported playing video games, and not every kid you meet is addicted to video games. Many parents worry about their kids' mental health when gaming as well, though there seem to be far more benefits than detriments in this regard. Most players report gaining intense positive feelings from video games, from overcoming difficult tasks, and from entering the flow state. The flow state is a state of intense focus and immersion that can lead to an increase in commitment in school, decreases anxiety, improves self-esteem, and helps a person within social relationships. According to Jones et al., it was previously thought that, quote, flow would require many years of learning and skill development, and then that many would not experience flow. However, video games, through physical input, adjustment of difficulty, and real-time visual feedback, can provide near immediate and on-demand flow experiences for the player, end quote. making the flow state a benefit many people can reap. Video games are also known to ease stress, even if the video game itself causes some frustration. In order to complete a goal within a game, you have to put your frustrations to use or put them aside. This way, players learn to cope with their stress a little better. It encourages players to solve problems and look at issues from different perspectives, leading to better social support and lower levels of depression. If the player has pre-existing stressors, playing games can serve as an outlet for those negative emotions. Kids often report using games to let off steam when they're frustrated. For instance, if a kid had a bad fight with a friend, instead of taking their anger out on someone else, they're able to direct their anger into the game instead. This helps kids regulate their emotions. Researchers surveyed kids from middle school and high school and found that depression levels were far lower in kids who played video games than the ones who didn't. Students who played a moderate amount of games, 7 to 10 hours a week, seemed to have the highest self-esteem, as well as closer relationships with their families. These moderate players also reported overall better mental health than those who play less or more than 7 to 10 hours a week. Over half of the participants in this study also indicated that they played violent games, and they still saw these benefits. In fact, it seems like the more time people play video games, the more benefits they saw. Until they surpass 10 hours a week, that is. At that point, it may circle around to slightly increase anxiety and insomnia, but even then, players seem to be better off than those that don't play video games at all. People who play games for social reasons instead of for achievements tend to have better mental states as well. It's a common stereotype that gamers are lonely and have no social life, but this can't be further from the truth. Many people have suggested that they feel closer to their online friends than their in-person friends, and that they are more likely to talk about sensitive topics with these people. Meeting people in a neutral space that you can control makes it much easier for people who struggle to make bonds outside their virtual world to make friends. Whether they have difficulties leaving the house, or they have an avoidant attachment style, or the like. There is a comfort in knowing that you never have to talk to the people you play with again, unless you wanted to. It also helps that different games attract different types of people, so you already know they have a few things in common when talking with another player. These relationships also seem to be incredibly lasting. Some people even find love through video games. Playing online games can also let people keep in touch with their in-person friends and family. While playing games with friends can decrease a player's immersion in the game, therefore decreasing the stress relief they get from it, the break in immersion may also reduce the risk of addiction and problematic playing. Playing with friends also makes it easier for people to translate the skills they learn from the game to real life, and bolsters their social and psychological resilience. Feelings of self-worth within the player will also grow as they have someone to share their accomplishments with in-game. Video games also generally increase a person's social skills. When a game has social aspects, whether it's online or the player interacts with NPCs, non-player characters, it encourages pro-social behavior, or behavior that helps other people or society. This is true even when the person plays violent video games, especially if they're playing to socialize. Cooperative games improves pro-social behavior to a greater extent than competitive games or games with NPCs. Kids who play cooperative games tend to be better at sharing, cooperation, and maintaining relationships outside the virtual world, again, even if the games they're playing are violent. Playing massively multiplayer online role-playing games further develops social skills by requiring players to determine who to trust and how best to lead a group on the fly. This gives players the ability to make snap decisions and further their pro-social skills. Pro-social skills aren't the only skills to be gained by gamers, however. Studies show that playing shooter games greatly increases a person's spatial skills, something that has been shown to be correlated with higher capabilities at STEM. The better the person at STEM is, the more opportunities they will have in the future. Having to navigate a three-dimensional space and make split-second decisions to make a kill hones this ability in addition to the ability to filter out irrelevant information. In one study, researchers took a lot of people who never played video games or played very little of them and split them into two groups. One group was made to play shooter games, while the other did not play any games at all. After some time, both groups were given a difficult puzzle to solve. Those who played the shooter games were able to solve the puzzles more efficiently because they could better determine details that were unimportant and ignore them, focusing only on the aspects that would bring the person to the solution. Scientists have also found that the spatial skills gained by shooter games rivals that of professional training, is quick to acquire, and can be applied outside of games for their use in real life. Another skill that video games can improve is the ability to problem solve. Being able to problem solve is vital if a person wants to be successful in life. Most, if not all, video games have problem solving involved, whether it be in the form of puzzles, strategy, or simply figuring out how the game works. Games don't always give a lot of direction on how to win. They may tell you the basic rules, the controls, and what the goal of the game is, but the player is encouraged to find out the rest on their own. Some games don't even give you that. One of my favorite games, Hollow Knight, just drops you into the game and doesn't tell you any of the controls besides the ones that are a little more unique. This forces the player to press buttons and see what works and find out the best ways to use the abilities. It doesn't even tell you what the main goal is, but instead it tells you through the slow accumulation of context clues as you explore the world. Gaming is all about trial and error. The problem solving required for gaming causes players to stretch their brains, build on what they already know, and try new things. According to Granick from APA PsycNet, biologists have been stumped on a certain problem regarding the structure of a protein. So they created a game to see if gamers could help solve the problem. Scientists have been working on this problem for 10 years, but, quote, the nonlinear, cooperative, and creative problem-solving techniques used by these gamers seem to be precisely the skills needed to finally solve this elusive problem, end quote. With the help of the gamers, a long-time scientific problem had finally been solved. However, the ability to problem solve would not be possible without a growth mindset. Video games encourage growth mindsets, where the internalized idea that a person's traits are not fixed. That if they are not good at something now, it doesn't mean that they can't work hard to become good at it. A fixed mindset is the opposite. The person feels like their traits are fixed and cannot change, and that their traits are who they are. When a person has a fixed mindset, it can be far more likely for them to quit in the face of adversity. After all, if they can't do it, why bother? Should a person want to become successful in life, they need to understand that not everything will be easy when you first start, but as long as you keep trying, you can reach great heights. To gain a growth mindset, a person should be praised or rewarded for their efforts instead of the result of their efforts. This is what video games do. Games reward people for improvement through new high scores, gaining more points, and things like that. If you play a time-based game, seeing the time it takes you to finish the level go down is very rewarding in its own right, especially if you get better rewards for doing so, even if it's just bragging rights. I myself am objectively bad at video games. It usually takes me far longer to understand the mechanics of the games than the average person, and I am slow to learn, but when the game is fun and it points out my improvement, I can't help but keep playing, to keep learning. Often I play the games until I become one of the best players, and I wouldn't have done that if they didn't encourage me to keep playing despite my initial failings. Research on the positive effects of gaming is still very sparse, and very little of it is conclusive. Like research on the negative effects, a lot of these findings may also be biased, so take everything you hear about the effects of video games, whether positive or negative, with a grain of salt. Even if nothing is for certain, everything I've presented is still important to make note of. Know that every issue has two sides, and that things are often more complex than they seem. Gaming isn't inherently bad, and it shouldn't be treated as such. Don't worry if your kid plays video games. Just make sure that they occasionally do other things too, and your kid should be a very well-rounded person. Thanks for watching.